Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Let's move on to Africa, where there's a lot going on, starting with Sudan. One friend messages James Cotnell, the RSF are doing exactly what they used to do in Darfur. It's horrible. Khartoum is on fire. Sudanese security forces have used live ammunition in a major operation to disperse a protest camp in central Khartoum. Protesters are facing a massacre, said the Sudanese Professionals Association, a driving force behind months of protests. The mask of the military council has fallen, revealing its face, it said in a statement. The Sudanese people are going to respond with the weapon of peacefulness and resistance to violence. I now take you back to November 2014 when beautiful Blaise Compaoré was overthrown in Ouagadougou, and I wrote a piece about Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa. I said what's clear is that a very young, very informed, very connected African youth demographic, and that's clear from the streets of Khartoum, many characterize this as a demographic dividend, which for beautiful Blaise turned into a demographic terminator, is set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and a rebalancing has begun. We need to ask ourselves how many people can an incumbent or a transitional military council shoot stone cold dead in such a situation? 100? 1,000? 10,000? This is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent can't go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. Therefore, the preeminent point to note is that protests in Burkina Faso achieved escape velocity. Overthrowing incumbents is all about acceleration, momentum, and speed, best characterized as the German word blitzkrieg. I also take you to Paul Virilio's point that this battle is now joined, but it's a battle that's going to take place on the street. The revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. Now, Kapuscinski, Shah of Shahs, the choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history. And if the crowd disperses, goes home, which is clearly what the military council is trying to achieve, does not reassemble, we say the revolution is over. And finally, Gramsci, the crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. This is Burhan meeting MBS. And this is Middle East Eye about Hemeti. He's really the central locus of the soldiers' loyalty. That might be inaccurate, maybe of the RSF more than the soldiers. Because he controls Khartoum, he has approximately 13,000 men in Khartoum. He's very hard to remove without any bloodshed. The Economist has a great article about Sudan's street-fighting women, the unfinished revolution that pushed out a dictator. There was an atmosphere of darkness, now there is hope. And so we Sudanese, he said, we cover pain with joy. Highly volatile, highly fluid moment. Let's see how it pans out. President Tshisekedi hosted President Kagame and President João Lourenço of Angola to a tripartite meeting. President Lungu attended the funeral of the late DRC opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi. South African all shares up 5.52% year to date. Dollar rand, last time I checked, 14.5934. Egyptian pound, 16.7889. I'm still bullish, think we go to 16. Egyptian EGX 30 up 5.02% this year. Nigerian all share down 1.15% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange down 1.53% in 2019. The Economist has a great article about the empire builder assessing Vincent Bolloré. Who is France's greatest capitalist? Vincent Bolloré, who over nearly 4 decades has built an empire spanning African ports and French pipelines, pay TV, electric cars, the world's biggest music label, and much else besides. Sales of 23 billion euros and 81,000 employees around the globe. Bolloré Group testifies to his boss's knack for business. From 1822, 5 generations had built a Bolloré's Bible and cigarette paper concern in Brittany. Vincent is what the French call a self-made man. In 1981, still in his 20s, he paid a couple of francs for the family concern, which had fallen into the hands of its creditors, a quixotic move for an up-and-coming investment banker. A risk-taker of the sort every economy needs, investors who bought shares in Bolloré 30 years ago, soon after it listed, have made their money back 40 times over, compared with 8 times for France's CAC 40. Logistics and pipelines business has been the most successful, includes ports in Africa, where Bolloré says it has invested 4 billion euros, a freight forwarding arm, 3 African rail concessions, and French oil terminals. Analysts value it at 8 billion euros or so, roughly half of Bolloré's value, including debt. It faces stiffer competition than it did, but margins are healthy. Vivendi, a media behemoth in which Bolloré owns a 26% stake worth around 8 billion euros, has been a mixed bag. Universal Music, wholly owned by Vivendi but run at arm's length from California, has prospered as streaming revenues from Lady Gaga, U2 and its other stars have soared. Its value is thought to have swelled from $8 billion to $30 billion. At its heart is a corporate millefeuille, where Mr. Bolloré and his family control a company that holds the majority stake in a firm that in turn owns most of another, and so on. Very interesting fellow, and a very interesting article. Then he got into trouble in the Togo, where he was getting involved in Putin's corner, which was helping people win elections. Tanzania Investment Center, TIC, has organized a forum whose key aim is to attract domestic and international investors into the cashew nut sector. The Tanzanian government is still holding a huge stock of cashew nuts, estimated at 200,000 tons it bought from farmers in November last year. Rejection of Barrick Gold bid is no-brainer, says top acacia mining investor. This is Fidelity. Said on Friday Barrick Gold's low bid to buy acacia shares it does not already own showed a lack of judgment, and it was a no-brainer to reject it. We are definitely not going to accept the offer. Acacia shares peaked above £6 in 2016 and have plunged to less than £2, although they rallied in February on the announcement of the proposed settlement and better than expected output.